Welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness, thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
And welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness. Freeman Michaels here with Barnet Bain, right on the edge, right on the edge. When we left, I said I'm more committed to who I'm becoming than to who I've been.
And what does that involve?
What does that mean?
No, I know what I do. I am exploring what it means.
Right.
I am not clear enough about what it means to be able to lay it out, map it out for myself or for anybody else. But I am very clear on some of the hallmarks, some of the evidences of what that looks like. It's chaotic.
It's disorganized.
It's chaotic, but there's a beautiful chaos to it. It has certain qualities of that have to do with intuition, and it has to do with being responsive to little glimmerings of communication, feeling states and coincidence, and making them be meaningful.
Yeah.
Where my ego and my conditioned self would dismiss these things or would trivialize these things, I make them meaningful in ways that allow me to develop a certain magical, a certain fantastic relationship with life, an enchanted relationship with life itself. I'm creating a virtuous loop of something brand new, which includes deep intimacy with an emotional life and a feeling life that in the past was very, very restricted. I had a very, very small menu. I had the 8-pack of Crayolas. And now I am working with the 42, the giant 42-pack of Crayolas. And it's very, very challenging to do that because some of those colors I was socialized to believe are wrong. If a friend calls you up and says, I can't be on your show because I had a death,
you can't be mad.
You don't get to be mad.
Right.
I'm not being mad in a way that I'm expressing to him. I'm not.
You're not making
I'm just
him wrong.
I'm honoring all of the different colors, and they all make me more of who I can be. The line there that is very important that I want our listeners to understand is that I am not using an emotional intimacy as an excuse to become a narcissist and throw all my emotions out like somebody's garbage on the lawn.
Well, that's not being responsible for your emotions. That's not really honoring them. That's writing them down storylines. Because the minute that we allow for the feeling to come up, it's okay. But in the context,
when you allow a feeling to come up, it moves through.
Right.
But if you allow a feeling to come up and you put a story around it, it does not move through. And pretty soon, you're saying things like a part of me.
Right. Well, so I don't want to kill the part of me. There's value in that. I hear you. What you're saying or said earlier is, look, I don't need to be doing the conscious compartmentalizing or dimensionalizing, whatever the language is.
I did until I don't.
Right. Okay. So, but what happens is there's enough of a muscle there that I know that this feeling and the kinds of storylines it's creating are okay, but they're not all of me. They're not so consuming that you're going to, go rushing into or follow the thread to where you're creating a whole world that confirms that, no one can be trusted or something like that. There's enough of a trustworthiness.
It happens if you don't feel the feelings. If you do feel the feelings, then there's no story created. There are only feelings, and they move through.
This is a maturity where you can feel the feelings and be in the moment because it's organized around showing up more fully for yourself and others. Look, if you're just saying, I need to feel the feelings, and there's no sense of purpose. Well, feeling feelings is great. Why do you feel feelings? Well, I feel feelings so I can show up more for myself and others. I feel feelings so my feelings can be more trustworthy because I want to be more trustworthy than myself and others. And in the past,
feelings doesn't make them trustworthy.
It doesn't, because the feelings in my experience, my feelings were organized around conclusions and storylines. Look,
exactly.
I say this in terms of a child. When a child, like when my kids were really little, like 3 years old, and we'd be at the park, and let's say Antonio would come to me crying. The propensity is to say, what happened? That's not helpful. What I want to do is say, what do you need? How can I help you? What happens with little kids is they'll run back in and play the minute their needs are met. But the minute you ask them what happened, they'll start reporting a story. And parents unconsciously do this with their kids. They say, well, what happened? What did that little boy do to you? Or whatever. And they start creating these storylines that aren't helpful. Little kids, their feelings are dynamic. They're going to be upset in one moment and joyful in the next moment. And it will flit through if they can just feel their feelings and have them acknowledged.
Well, little kids are, in terms of how they develop, are not comparable.
I understand.
It's apples and oranges.
It's not exactly apples and oranges, because the nature of feelings is they're dynamic. They come up and they go through us to the degree we have enough of a consciousness to hold them in a compassionate way where they just come up and they just dissipate. And that's the nature of them. They are dynamic. They were dynamic when we were little kids, even if we couldn't really process them and make sense of them, right? But the way we were taught to process them may not be helpful.
Well, the way we're socialized. To experience feelings is not to experience them.
Well, or to attach them to something that did or didn't happen or should or shouldn't have happened.
Which is the tool that is used, it is the tool that prevents us from feeling our feelings.
Yeah.
So we have a very limited menu of feelings that are okay, regulated by the stories around the culture and strong silent types in men and emotional feelings in women. And so men get to feel nothing, and women get to feel weepy, and that's pretty much all that is culturally, socially sanctioned, and I'm exaggerating to make a point, of course.
Right.
When we are children, however we were modeled it for ourselves and however we're modeling it for others, that's for me a different conversation than this. Where I am now in my life is sufficiently understanding of the process that I have been through, that I can begin to wander out of bounds of it. The wandering out of bounds of it is, can I experience more colors without limiting myself with the vehicle of limitation, which is called story making.
Yep.
Eventually, for a guy who's made his life and living telling stories, it is not lost on me the irony that I am moving, that I see the high ground of my own being as beyond stories.
Yeah.
There's a point at which I can relate to mystery without a story. Without any story whatsoever. If there is a story, it is so big and so complex that I have not had the experience or the referencing that I can make any sense of it. But a part of whatever that is a bigger experience firing on more cylinders of life with more colors and without any, or without, when I recognize an anchor into the past, I want to cut the bait on it.
I'm totally with you, and this is again what you've called beautiful chaos. What organizes it? Look, it's possible to have beautiful chaos and it not be organized. I don't know if it's possible. Let me back off that. What organizes the beautiful chaos is the commitment to showing up more fully for yourself and others. That organizes.
That is what keeps you sane in it.
Yeah.
And that can only be a choice made by someone that is sufficiently familiar with their past that they can not have to steward it moment by moment. But it is chaos. It is not, the moment it ceases to be chaos, it's the known. So it is entirely uncertain.
No, I agree.
And if we trail back to story making, that chaos will be frightening chaos.
Yeah.
If we trail back, if we experience it, the feelings, the complexity, we're aware of the desire to shoehorn it into a story. We're aware of it, but we don't go there. We're aware of it, and we just stay in the wildness, the uncertainty. That, with an intention to discover something
Yep.
wonderful.
Yep.
That keeps the chaos potentially beautiful as
Yep.
opposed to nightmarish.
Well, so that's a context within which, a generous context.
It's a being state.
It's a being state. And the being state is so going back to the qualities.
Mm-hmm.
Something you said, I'm aware of the qualities in this. I'm holding the known loosely, in so that there's space for unknown or newness or mystery to come in, and whatever I've known today, I'm willing to put down in service to something that I could learn that would open me up more and more to the possibilities that I'm committed to generating and creating.
Yeah,
The
as a friend of mine,
qualities.
there's a friend of mine who has this wonderful saying about this. Says, even though all crows that I've ever experienced are black, in the very next moment I could see a white one.
Yeah.
Now, if I take that and thread that and shoehorn that into a story, I'm back. I might as well have only ever seen black crows.
Right.
So I don't want it to be exceptional. I want to be exceptional. Not better than.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't want to find exceptions in the world. I want to be in a state of exceptionalism, meaning I want to move off. I want to cut bait. I want to cut the anchors free. I want to lift that last foot off the reservation with the commitment and the conviction, with the passion and the power to dream, and to go more lucidly into these dream states, feeling more of who I really am, more and more of who I really am.
I love it.
Somebody walking outside our
Yeah,
window.
they're all walking. They're just saying hi and moving around,
Walking outside our
wiggling
window.
and jiggling.
Yeah.
And I think that's beautiful. And I being on radio and being in this moment, I have a tendency to want to tie it together tightly, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to resist the temptation to say, yeah, let me draw a conclusion so our audience can walk away with a talking point. Extending it, showing up more fully for myself and others, having a sense of what I want to generate and create, a level of ownership of everything showing up, that it's a mirror, and to the degree that I can own it as a reflection of something within me, not even having to know what that is necessarily, but to interact with it in a way that's constructive versus trying to control it or fix it or solve it, in my experience has opened up a tremendous field of possibility, right? I was actually just thinking about this because there's one of my patterns is, and we've talked about this before, is that I've gotten into processing as a habit. So the processing has taken on a life of its own, right? So
It's a comfort zone for us both.
right. So
Make a story about it.
yeah, and or go to work and try to fix it. And what am I working on right now? And so forth and so on. Because that's been so helpful, but at this point that's topping out. And I am sufficiently skilled enough and sufficiently processed enough. I can hold my past in a way that's constructive. I don't need to go and figure out what happened to me at age 4 or 3 or what's being reflected here. I have a sense of it, which is enough. And I'm committed enough to my vision of possibility that I'm up to, that I want to create and generate. I'm really cognizant of the space between me and another person of possibility that I want to feed, in terms of, we'll call it the relationship. But for me, it's an intention of possibility that I'm up to feeding. And I see where we go left and right. And I see where we track back in my relationship with my wife, but my relationship with friends, my relationship with clients, my relationship with whomever, that I'm in a regular experience of relationship, that I'm more vested in the space between us. And it's big enough to hold all the fragments and all the ways that it patterns left and right. And I don't need to so rigorously process everything. And that's a beautiful space.
Absolutely. It occurs to me as you were speaking that we don't jump past these things. It's not to say that there is not a place for processing. It's critical.
It's
It is
critical.
absolutely critical.
Yeah.
And so sometimes we have listeners that say things that, about their children. I'm going to attempt impossible, but I'm going to attempt it anyway to model this sorts of behaviors in order to spare them having to go through shadow years. In order to spare them.
Good luck. But we'll go for it.
You don't. If we could succeed in doing that, what a act of violence! What a terrible thing to do to a child is to render them impotent and not a part of their own experience.
Yep.
Because we need to make stories.
That's right.
We need to try and fix ourselves and fix the world. We need to develop outrage and enrage and indignate. We need to fire up. Those are expressions of the spirit. We need to understand that and experience it from the inside out and have impact in the world and change the world. And the world is impacted and does change as a result of those things. And we are now discussing an entire superseding another order of relationship with all that is, a different order of impact. Not better, not worse, it's just another order of it. But we don't leapfrog past these things, in the way that sometimes technology leapfrogs. You can't get a phone and all of a sudden the fourth world is better wired on cell phones than we are here in the first world.
Right.
You don't get to leapfrog past your own inner putting together of things, of consciousness. That I feel needs to be said again and again.
But you also don't want to get stuck in a stage. So again, I'm going to track back. The processing became a way of creating intimacy and connection. So I could become a process junkie where I'm always in the next process, always in the next workshop, because that's not how I know how to create relationships.
Yes.
Equally, I was at a party recently and there was a conversation that was very familiar. It was a political conversation. Left or right doesn't make any difference, but it had an ideology that enough people at the table were bought into that it got a lot of fuel underneath it. And I was hearing the conversation from the place of knowing it really well, recognizing there was a stage in my life where I would have jumped on that conversation and been all over it and been throwing, gas on the flames or whatever.
On one side or the other.
Oh, it doesn't make any difference. Yeah. But I wasn't in that moment. And it was interesting because I watched the intensity with which, the realness with which the folks were vested in that. I know that really well because it's what that stage is you were talking about that one goes through. But on the other side of that, it's the ability to unplug from these storylines that bind us to a limitation and that generate a world around us that conforms to that belief structure. So in that conversation of here's how the world works and there's an us and there's a them and they're doing it to us or they're not doing or whatever they should be doing and can't you see it and we've all got to wake up and it's okay. It's okay. It's developmentally appropriate. The challenge is that it becomes a way of bonding. Like all these folks could have probably been doing this these were older folks. They've probably been doing this for 50 years, gathering their friends who have the same ideology and railing against the man or the machine or the this or the that. And I was like, wow. So look, I bless them and they're not doing wrong. I'm just aware for me that isn't a stage I want to be at anymore. I don't want to keep running that story. I like the space that I've created, and this show has been a magical part of my life in that the dismantling, even of the stuff that's worked, that we have committed to going to the edge and staying on the edge, letting go of the known in favor of what we can grow into and learn and explore, that is the unknown, that is the mystery, that is this generous offer of possibility that we're tracking, that there's a portal that opened up. Wow, there's a whole new possibility. But it's really interesting because everything you just said, and we talked about this after that, I was like, wow, I had this incredible experience with these political conversation. I was like, the part of me that wanted to jump on it and go, yeah. And I just resisted that and went, that's so interesting. Because the bigger, I don't want to say bigger in the sense of better, but the part of me that I'm nurturing and growing right now isn't up to that. It's not what I want to be doing.
That's it. There is... we're multi-dimensional beings.
Right.
And we are beginning more and more to discover and to own that we are multi-dimensional beings. And in ways that we can't even perceive or conceive of, this multidimensionality, including all of the various parts of me that are operating from their own limited perspectives of all that is, both inside and outside. They're all equally me. Now, I say those things, it's an abstraction. I don't have an experiential, conscious relationship with that. To the extent that I do, it's very, very limited. So, but as a concept, the truth of it as a concept resonates with me enough to be a siren call. It is the synergy of all of these multidimensional aspects operating together that is the dynamic complexity. This piece of me that is future-oriented, this piece of me in the past, that piece of me that is being reflected by a conversation that our community values from the 60s, and this part that is reactionary, and this part that all of these are aspects of me, all working in a synergy. That is the dynamic complexity out of which something much greater and much more magical than the sum of the parts is unfolding. And then I am moving through it, thinking that I am separate from it, and walking consciously through my own subconscious and unconscious and higher conscious self.
Reflected everywhere. And we're going to take a quick break. Stay with us. We'll be right back here on Cutting Edge Consciousness.